So does anyone have any questions before we start?
Well, I would like to start off with a disclaimer. I got notice of this very, very late in the game, and I have not had a chance to watch either of the movies. I did watch the Bela Lugosi one years ago, so I kind of know what that one's about, but I have not watched the Langella one at all.
Okay.
I am a movie buff. I don't know if you know Robert Kagan, but
Yes.
he does this sort of thing with the Avon Library, and I attend his discussions with the Avon people.
Excellent. Yeah, I know Bob through CCSU, and
yeah,
and
I
he's
figured you
really
would.
good. Yeah.
I figured you would know him. Yes. So, you know, I enjoy discussions like this. I usually watch the movie beforehand so I can intelligently contribute, but I will have to unintelligently contribute tonight.
Well, so here's the movies that we're going to talk about. Just two of many. I think I read online that there's, I don't know, 60.
Oh, there's over 100 Dracula, I mean, of various things. And then that doesn't even include all of the vampire movies, right? You know, so there are non-Dracula vampire movies too. So it's a, and what, real quickly. So here's some, yeah, let's just start off with this. Why do you think, what's the fascination with the Dracula story? Can anybody explain this to me?
Well, I can take a guess. Eastern Europe has always fascinated us because it's so mysterious. You know, we're familiar and comfortable with Western Europe. As you start to get toward the Carpathian Mountains, all bets are off. So, I mean, that's part of it. Part of it is because it was behind the Iron Curtain, but also part of it was because of Eastern Europe has always been just a mysterious, I don't want to say backward, but I will, place.
Okay. Right. So yeah. So Romania, Transylvania. That's they're different there. Okay. All right.
And I think there's also the theme of immortality.
Okay. Yeah.
The undead.
Yeah. The you know, and that's one of the interesting things, kind of in the two films, because in the Bela Lugosi film, he says to die, to be really dead, must be glorious, and because he's not, right? And so there's almost this dream of his that, boy, I wish I could, you know, it seems like I wish I could die, because I'm of who I am and what I am. I'm not allowed to, or I'm not able to. And in the Langella film, there's a scene where he's having dinner with Kate Nelligan, Lucy, and they're all alone. And Lucy had come to because he had invited Lucy and her father, Dr. Seward, to come on his first night in England, and Dr. Seward couldn't go, and so Lucy went on her own, and they're talking, and Dracula says, you know, I'm the last of my line, and my people, you know, my ancestors were warriors, and they were, you know, they were these strong leaders and warriors, and that way of life is gone now, and I'm the last one. And so I think he's trying, you know, the character in the Langella film is supposed to be sort of lonely, and sort of, you know, where I think he wants us, and John Badham, the director, wants us to feel sorry for him to some degree, that we're supposed to kind of sympathize with his isolation. And so when he finally finds a woman like Lucy, Kate Nelligan, they, it's like they fall in love. They, this is Mrs. Dracula here. If now if we can only make it work, kind of thing. So, but anyway, but he's different, right? And when and certainly Bela Lugosi in when he comes, he's definitely an outsider in a way that Langella's not. It's kind of just in the way he looks, etc. And Langella has the capes and the high collars and that sort of thing, just like Lugosi does. But he's not as alien as Bela Lugosi is in the 31 film.
So are you saying that there are more dimensions in the later film? What I mean by that is,
I think they're trying to do something else. The Langella film is definitely not as scary as the Lugosi film. He's not so much I mean, it's really the director, the producer, and Langella are definitely looking at him more as a gothic hero than a monster, right? And so he's definitely more of a romantic figure, right? You're sort of attracted to him in a traditional sort of romantic way, as opposed to, ooh, that guy's scary. We've got to break out the crosses and keep him from us.
now did you say earlier that there were multiple Dracula movies, more than just two?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There are 100 of them,
So why?
they're a mixture of things, right? Some
So
are
why is
comic
that?
and some are, so like there's a what is it? Billy the Kid versus Dracula movie, so which I've never seen. I have no idea the concept, but there's a movie out there entitled Billy the Kid versus Dracula.
Why
Well,
are there so many Dracula movies, and there aren't that many Frankenstein movies?
Oh, that's
there's a lot of Frankenstein movies too, I think, but there's
yeah, but
definitely
not
Dracula.
as many. I don't think as many. Yeah. Yeah, but I do think that that's because he's not just a monster, right? And that Frankenstein is Frankenstein, and actually I think the original Frankenstein movie, the Lon Chaney one, is it Lon Chaney or is it yeah,
Boris Karloff.
or Boris
Yeah,
Karloff? Sorry, yeah, it's that I think I like that better than Bela Lugosi's Dracula. If I had to put them side by side, I'd opt for the Frankenstein movie. That
What
said,
year is that one, Gil? Frankenstein.
that's a good question. I think
I
it's
think it's a little later than the Dracula one, so I think that things just effects and everything were better, but it does make Frankenstein kind of sympathetic, I thought.
Oh yes, yeah. The monster is definitely. He's when he gets into when he kills the little girl, he's not doing it to kill the little girl. It's just that he doesn't know his own strength. He's this figure, and it's not unlike. And so you kind of feel sorry for him. You're not necessarily sympathetic with the doctor at all for creating this thing that he can't control, but the monster itself, I think, is very sympathetic. If you've ever seen Straw Dogs with Dustin Hoffman, where he plays this American mathematician who goes. Who's on sabbatical, and he goes to Scotland, I think, and he rents a little place there with his wife, and he ends up having to defend this man who has severe mental disabilities, who has accidentally killed a little girl, kind of like it, and so he takes refuge in Dustin Hoffman's house, and Dustin Hoffman has to defend this mob that's coming to basically lynch this guy who doesn't really understand what he had done, and so we get this mild-mannered academic trying to, fending off this mob. But anyway, it's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen because it's so disturbing. But that figure of the man that Dustin Hoffman has to defend is not unlike Frankenstein's monster. That it's this thing that is the person who really doesn't have the mental capability to understand what has happened, but there's a whole bunch of people really angry at him. But to get back to Dracula, I think, well, like in Bram Stoker's novel, one of the things, and it's a kind of very traditional Victorian novel. And Victorian novels pretty much all deal with boundaries, right? It's all about boundaries, about breaking boundaries or reestablishing boundaries and that sort of thing. One of the Victorian concerns was with the expanding empire, there were more and more different kinds of people showing up in England, right? Because you had all of these people from the vast empire, and people who because the empire was so great, had connections to the empire, showing up in England and being very un-English. And so I think that's, certainly the novelist is kind of dealing with that idea of this kind of alien person, this alien creature coming to England, and how does England deal with it, and the threats that outsiders have on. So the upside of being an empire is you're imperial, and you have control over a large portion of the globe. The bad news is you've got all these people who aren't like you coming to England. So it's the downside to empire. But I do think that one of the reasons it's so popular is because he's not a monster per se. Even Bela Lugosi, he's got weird eyes, and he can hypnotize you and all of this, but he's a count, right? He's an aristocrat. He is cultured, and so that he's attractive in that way, right? Who doesn't want to hang out with counts, right? Who doesn't want to, you may not want to go to his place because it's it's an abandoned old abbey with lots of rats and cobwebs and that sort of thing. But then again, if you're living in a sanitarium next door, I would think the abandoned abbey wouldn't be so bad. But so you have that. He's familiar enough to be attractive, right? And I think that's why we like him. Because the other thing is, like in the original novel, Dracula could go out during the day, right? There wasn't yes, he slept in a coffin in the soil of Transylvania, but he wasn't prevented from going out during the day. And so there are all sorts of things that were added as the Dracula thing kind of took hold. And real quickly, both of these movies are based on the play that was based on the novel. And what's interesting is both Bela Lugosi and Frank Langella were in the play on Broadway before making the movies. So they very much had inhabited the characters for a long time before putting them on screen. And so, Jeanette and I sort of came up with these two movies to, we're going to do two Dracula movies, and these two made, kind of made a lot of sense because of that parallel. Because you could pick two other Dracula movies that are dramatically different. But here, I think because of the similar pedigree, the differences are even more interesting then. So the fact that Langella is much more of a romantic hero as opposed to Bela Lugosi, the fact, well, but like in the, I had to write it down to keep it straight. Okay, in the novel, Mina, because you have the two women, Mina and Lucy. In the novel, Mina is her last name is Murray, and she's a friend of Lucy's, and she is engaged to Harker. And Lucy is the first one. No, and Mina's the first one to die. In the movie, her last name is Van Helsing, and she is friends with Lucy Seward. She is engaged to Harker, and Lucy is the first one to be bitten and die. In the 79 one, Lucy and Harker are engaged. Mina's the first one to be bitten. And so they're all the same characters, but they kind of, they're not, no one feels bound to tell the exact same story. They make, they kind of play with them. So for instance, even, what's his name? Who's the bug eating guy?
Renfield.
Renfield, thank you. Renfield in the novel is the real estate agent who goes to Transylvania to bring the paperwork for Dracula's renting of the abandoned abbey, and he travels all the way to Transylvania to help him move his stuff, right? And that's when he's bitten by Dracula and becomes his slave. And he doesn't want to bite other people. He just wants to eat little things. So he starts off with cockroaches and other bugs and works his way up to spiders. But he kind of says, I'll do whatever you want, but just don't make me eat, don't make me kill people. So in the novel, he's like that. In the 31 film, he's like that. In the 79 film, we start on the boat. We don't see Renfield going to Transylvania. We start on the boat. Renfield is already under the sway of Dracula. But the twist in the 79 movie is that we find out that Renfield is kind of works for the firm that Harker belongs to. So Harker is his boss, and Renfield, when they first meet on the beach where Dracula's ship has crashed, he kind of yells at him for, you sold me out. You sold me out. I did your dirty work. And so there's a Renfield, Renfield was a sacrifice to this firm that Harker is part of. So that was kind of an interesting twist there. In the 79 film, Mina is a friend. Mina Van Helsing is a friend of Lucy Seward. So Lucy is Dr. Seward's daughter. Mina is Van Helsing's daughter, and they're friends from way back. And Mina is sick. She's a sickly woman who, and so when she gets sicker, it's not immediately apparent what happens, but she succumbs pretty quickly, and then dies. So yeah, so it's interesting that you have these same characters, but they're kind of slightly tweaked depending on what the filmmakers want to do, or I guess even the people who are doing the plays, when they mount the play, they twist and things. It's so that's an interesting fact. The other interesting thing that happens in the 79 film is there's a lot more of Victorian kind of modernity happening. So you have them dancing to a phonograph. Harker's driving around in his automobile, right? And we see the automobile next to horse-drawn carriages and things like that. So you have a lot of modernity sort of being introduced. And certainly that was one of the concerns of Bram Stoker. Once again, with any sort of Victorian novel too, the idea of modernity is good on what, progress is good, but except when it's not, right? Modernity is great, except when it starts to allow women to raise questions, right? To ask questions about what is our role in society. And we see in the 79 film, we see Lucy, when we first meet Lucy and Mina, they're up in Lucy's room. Mina has come to visit her because she's not feeling, she's sick with something, and that has nothing to do with Dracula, but she's sick, or she's always been frail, we're told. But Lucy's reading a letter from a law firm saying, "We look forward to your joining us." And Mina says, "Wow, I'm really impressed by your being you're being able to kind of stand up to those men." And then Lucy starts saying something, and clearly Mina's heard this before, because by the end of Lucy's little speech, and it basically ends with "women are not chattel," Mina has joined in. So she's obviously heard Lucy say this before many times. But anyway, so Lucy's this strong, independent woman. And what do you do with that, right? And so you have her going to Dracula's home all by herself, and kind of standing up to him in a way that Harker can't, Mina can't, and even though she doesn't know what Van Helsing's going to know and what Van Helsing is going to tell Seward, she sees something in Dracula that she's very attracted to, and so that's fascinating. And so, but you've got technology, you've got kind of an emerging feminism. And Dracula kind of is this fluid character that plays with boundaries, right? He's not like the people that you meet every day, right?
Is the Langella movie in color or black and white?
It's in color. Yeah, it's in color.
Very muted though, right? It's very muted color. Just
yeah, I mean, right. There's a lot of darkness, right? And there's a lot of the things that you see in the Lugosi film too. The rats, the cobwebs, the shadows, and that sort of thing.
Well, like I said, I haven't seen the movies to compare them.
Right.
But even so, I think I would prefer the older one. Number one, because it's in black and white, and I think a Dracula movie should be in black and white. Number two, because Bela Lugosi is a scarier guy. That's what he does. He plays scary roles.
Right.
The other guy is almost handsome. I mean, he's more of a Hollywood heartthrob.
Yeah, and that's it. He's not supposed to scare you. He's supposed to kind of lure you in a way, attract you in a way that is scarier in a way.
But I don't know. I don't like that, because I would say that any creature that turns into a bat and comes down and sucks your blood, it should not be a sympathetic figure in any way, shape, or form. mean,
Well,
you said earlier that he's not a monster, but he may not be a monster, but he's a murderer.
But
Right.
but he
you know,
doesn't. But I guess part of what Len. Go ahead.
well,
Go
I'm
ahead, Jeanette.
old enough to remember when this movie came out, and I was old enough to go see it. So they billed him as like sexy, the sexy Dracula. That was the hype, that he was, he was attractive, he was sexy, and and women wanted him. So
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, why does he do what he does, right? So he's a murder, but he murders people, but he actually has them, live forever. So, but why does he do it? Does he do it because he does it because he has to, right? He, he doesn't really have a choice, right?
he
I
doesn't,
mean,
but I think that he chooses, you know, he did choose Lucy in the newer version, to be his bride, I think, forever. It was like a forever thing.
yes, right.
Yeah.
And she kind of, and I guess the question is, Bill, how likely are you to see this? How much spoiler alert do I need to, should we, because we can talk about the ending and that sort of thing, but I don't want, if you haven't seen it and are planning on it, then we won't talk about it.
Well, you can do as much spoiler stuff as you want. I think, I am interested enough in the old Bela Lugosi black and white where I would see it multiple times. I don't think I'm interested in the Langella one, even to see it once.
Oh, okay. All right. There you go.
Because
Okay.
it's too slick. It's too slick. I don't think Dracula should be slick.
Okay. All
I mean,
right.
this whole thing about he's sexy and romantic. I mean, it's like the stereotype. Women want a settled down guy to get married to, but they want a wild guy to have flings with. And it's like a Streetcar Named Desire, where Stanley Kowalski is he's just a wild man, and yet she falls for him anyway because he is a wild man.
Right.
And I'm not interested.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. No, that's okay.
I think
I would say that if you have the time, though, you should watch it. I thought it was good. I too am quite a fan of the old horror movies. So I watched it because that's what we were talking about, and I enjoyed it. And I hadn't seen the 31 movie in a really long time, and so there was so much I didn't remember. So I enjoyed seeing that, but it was almost a little I don't know, kitschy when he did his eye thing and they like lit up his eyes and
Right. But of course it wasn't kitschy then, right?
No,
I mean, that's
no.
one of the things that's, kind of, there's so much of the iconography that you kind of, oh, that old thing, but it wasn't the old thing then, right? That it helped make the thing old, by setting the standard.
But I think that the Langella movie, that he did the same thing without the highlighting of the it was, but you knew what he was doing. He was
Right. And, and there are just some really nice touches in the Langella film. So for instance, when the ship wrecks on the English shore, and it's within sight of the asylum, and Mina hears it, and so she goes to the window, and then she runs down, and she runs down to the shore, and she sees this wolf jump off the ship, and it runs into a cave, and so she follows it. I guess it's a big dog. It's a wolf, but it kind of looks, I guess she kind of, anyway. So she chases it, and when she gets in the cave, she comes across Frank Langella in this gorgeous coat with fur lining. I'll tell you, with a fur collar and stuff. But anyway, when we don't even see him yet, we just see his fingers, and we've seen his fingers. We saw his fingers coming out of the coffin on the boat. And it's always just kind of like the kind of it starts with just two and then three, and his fingers are how he hypnotizes people and that sort of thing. And I read some stuff, and it was basically the fingers of a bat, so bats have
Oh,
like fingers, and so you're supposed to kind of see that, but we don't see him. What's the first time we see him? I guess it's really not until the dinner scene where he comes in and he's introduced by the butler, by Seward's butler, Dracula, and then he comes in and it's Frank Langella looking great. And but that's, and I think that is, and immediately Lucy looks at him and is attracted to him. And it's funny because his character and certainly the way he carries himself. I don't know if you've ever seen Mel Brooks's 12 Chairs, um, which is my favorite Mel Brooks movie because it's actually a movie where there are characters I care about. But the 12 Chairs, and it's based on an old Russian story. Frank Langella plays a con man, a very suave, very convincing con man who hooks up with a Ron Moody, who plays a um, Russian aristocrat. This is after the revolution, and so he's now an aristocrat without anything. He's working a job in some communist office somewhere, and he discovers, or he hears that he had, well, I guess he knew about it. I'm trying to remember the setup now, but Ron Moody's the jewels of his family, the all of the jewels of his family were put into one of the chairs, one of the dining room chairs from their old estate. And so he's looking for these things. And so Langella figures out what he's trying to do, and they end up working together. But they have to find one of the 12 chairs that has all of the jewels in it. And so they go all around Russia looking for these chairs, right? And meanwhile, Dom DeLuise is a corrupt Orthodox priest who knows about the jewels too, and he's trying to find the chairs before Ron Moody does. But anyway, but Langella is this very attractive con man who you're kind of rooting for, even though or you're not sure whether is really helping Ron Moody, the aristocrat, find the jewels, or whether he's just kind of gonna take full advantage of him when kind of and steal them when he gets a chance. But anyway, it's very funny, and like I said, it's the one Mel Brooks movie where I actually care about the characters as characters. It's not as funny as some other Mel Brooks movies, but that's, I think, because we're more invested in what happens. But anyway, so that's
Well,
my favorite.
So, I've never heard of Frank Langella
Okay.
up until last week.
Okay.
And so, I mean, the picture I'm getting is that he was hired to play Dracula because he's good looking.
Well, but he's also a fine actor. He's
Is
a
he?
fine actor. Yes. Yeah. And like I said, he was on Broadway. He was, and he's done a lot of stuff. He's done a lot of stuff, and he's still working. Yeah, you should.
Well, I mean, when I think of, all right, I've got to cast my character. I've got to go out and do the casting. All right. So when I go looking for somebody to play Dracula, and I come across a guy named Bela Lugosi with an exotic name like that. Bela Lugosi, his exotic name. He's from Eastern Europe. He's not very handsome. He's perfect. He's perfect to play the part of a scary guy, a horror film star. And on the other hand, I've got this other guy named Frank Langella. That's an Italian name. He ought to be in a mafia movie. You know, I mean, what's he doing in a horror movie?
See,
You know,
that's it. It's not a horror movie, right? I think because real quickly,
It's a love story.
it's why remake? Why remake Dracula, right? Why try and if you're going to, if you just do what Bela Lugosi does, what's going to happen? You're going to be compared with Bela Lugosi and you're going to lose,
Right.
And so either you never remake a movie, and and usually remakes aren't as good, especially if they're classic. The originals were classics, but you do something different with it, and that's what I think they're trying to do. So they're not it is he is a figure who is attractive in a way that is unlike Bela Lugosi.
All right, so the target audience for the original Dracula would have been pretty much a family goes there, the kids get scared, even the parents get scared. Who's the target audience for the Langella film? Is it kids? Is it grown-ups? Is it families?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it wouldn't be. It's an R-rated movie, so you're not bringing the kids. I mean,
Okay.
I must admit, I was surprised it was R-rated because looking, there didn't seem to be, like an R-rated movie now there's just, gore and all sorts of stuff. And that doesn't really happen in this movie. And even the erotic scenes aren't, or erotic scene, it's not like it's graphic in any way. Right. So it's
More suggestive.
right. And so the R rating sort of surprised me, but that may have been because it's 1979. But it would be a PG movie, I think, now if you did the exact same thing and released it now.
Do you know if it was a box office success?
It wasn't. It didn't lose money, but it didn't make a ton of money. And part of the reason why is that George Hamilton, earlier in the year, early in 1979, was in a movie called Love at First Bite, which was a comic Dracula movie. And so I think, and this is what the filmmaker said, that they think that kind of took the edge off of this film, that people were kind of already kind of chuckling about vampire films, and so a serious one comes along, even if it's not scary serious, and it didn't so it didn't do as well as they had hoped. It got some good reviews. It was, and there are problems with it, and we can talk about those. But this was, the film was also made after a long successful run of Langella as Dracula on Broadway. So, so it wasn't like it just came out of the blue, and a lot like Lugosi in 31. So he had been doing the role on Broadway for a couple years as well.
So I assume that you're the type of a person who would watch a movie more than one time if you like it.
Yes.
So which of the two Dracula movies would you watch multiple times?
Well, he already watched it multiple times.
That's right. I watched both of these multiple times now.
No, but I mean, is it going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you had to pick, if you're picking one of these two, you'd go back to Bela Lugosi.
Right.
All right.
I would too.
Okay, yeah. But that said, I also think that the Langella version does, it is trying to do some and kind of introduces some ideas like modernity. It does call into question the sanitarium and kind of traditional medicine and things like that are kind of truer to Bram Stoker's vision than the Bela Lugosi movie. So it's a, there are pros and cons to both. if you only had one Dracula movie on your list, then yeah, Bela Lugosi. But partially because it set the standard for things.
Yeah,
I
But if you,
totally agree. And but I was looking around getting some background information yesterday, and there was someone, some guy that rated a bunch of Dracula movies that he saw. And I have to say that these two movies were in the top 15 of his favorite Dracula movies.
okay, so and if you were going to have I mean, and the nice thing is that if you don't just want one, then the Langella movie, I think, does sort of, kind of respond a little bit to the Lugosi movie, in that, kind of they interact. So there are not a few identical lines in the two, because they're based on the same source, and the way the two actors deliver those lines, the context, and real quickly, the 31 film, the budget was $355,000. The 1979 budget was 12 million, right? So, there's a lot of other things going on, but it's not a remake. It's not just trying to do what the Lugosi film did, and I wouldn't want that. Right.
Okay, well, now I think you've just convinced me that I should watch the Langella one, because if up until now I was thinking it's just a copycat, and if it's just a copycat, I'm not interested. But what you're saying is it's not a copycat; it takes off in a different direction, and so I think it's worth watching just to do the comparison.
Yeah,
Yo,
I think it's a different movie, just as Boris Karloff's Frankenstein. If that were the one true Frankenstein movie, then there'd be no way to enjoy Young Frankenstein, which I thought was a great movie. So it has the same basis of a start, but it's a very different movie with a different thrust to it. I have to say I wasn't thrilled with the Langella movie, but not because it wasn't the same. It's just I found it, I don't want to say boring, that's too strong. I just couldn't get into it.
Okay, all right, yeah. And why was it let's see if we can kind of tease it out a little bit. Certainly it's not as scary as the Lugosi movie, right? So the question is, well, what do you replace if you're not going to go for the scariness in a horror film? If you're not really making a horror film, what do you replace it with? And so, did you like the characters, Joe?
I did.
Okay.
Well, let me say, I didn't dislike them.
Okay.
It just didn't grab me in. It was like, I was saying, okay, when's it going to pick up? When are we going to get? When's it going to get good?
When's it going to? Okay. All right. Fair enough. So like, and all right, one of the no, here's a little spoiler alert, Bill. But anyway, given the erotic nature of the film, right? The fact that it's this love, this love story, more than a horror film. We finally get Lucy and Dracula together. What did you think of the atmospherics, Joe? Because if you remember, there was all sorts of lasers and black and red lights and that sort of thing.
I get the question. I just don't know how to answer it. I just couldn't.
But it didn't do anything.
It wasn't my kind of movie.
Okay.
I mean, if I went into it thinking that it was a love story, I probably wouldn't have seen it at all.
Okay, all right.
Not because there aren't love stories that I'm, I mean, I thought Casablanca was great. I mean, that was
Right,
fun.
there you go. Yeah.
But it may be simply that I'm thinking this is what a Dracula movie's supposed to be, and it wasn't
Okay.
that.
All right. And that's
And that
yeah.
may have
So
been that simple, although intellectually I understood it wasn't the same movie.
right.
But
Okay.
my feelings were, this just isn't catching me.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Jeanette, what do you think of the love scene?
That really wasn't, I think it was almost like an add-on because, so that really wasn't what I was watching it for, so,
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that because it's really weird and it's not like the rest of the movie, really. And yet on the one hand, it's the reason they did it that way is because they wanted it to be that's kind of a centerpiece. But John Badham, the director, first of all, he knew of these kind of new things, these new laser lights that were being used at concerts and that sort of thing. And so the lights that they used were actually borrowed or rented, rented from the Who, the band, the Who. And they needed to do them on a Sunday when the Who wasn't using them because they were on tour, but they didn't have a show that day, and so they got to use them for a day. And also, John Badham brought in what was his name, Maurice Binder, who you all know who Maurice Binder is, even if you've never heard the name. He's the guy that does or used to do the credit sequences of James Bond movies, right? And so, and they had a very kind of specific look to them and that sort of thing. And he kind of came in and orchestrated or directed the love scene with all of these lasers and lights and that sort of thing. And so it looks completely different from the rest of the film because it literally was directed by somebody else. But the idea was, and John Badham admits, he says there are a lot of people who don't like it and says it didn't work and that sort of thing. But we knew it had to, we just didn't want, just your typical love scene because it was a Dracula movie. It was Dracula was making love, so it had to be something spectacular, as it were. So so that's an interesting thing. And so Bill, I'll be interested to hear what you have to say when you see it.
Yeah, so once again, I don't really care about spoilers, so you can spoil it as much as you want. But if I remember correctly from the Bela Lugosi movie, there were no love scenes.
There were no love scenes.
No, it was just, sucking the blood.
That's right.
But
Yes.
what you're saying is that in the Langella, there's this love scene, but is there also the blood in the neck?
Yeah. He bites people's necks, and in fact he bites Kate Nelligan's neck. But his relationship with Lucy is different from what it was with Mina and any other woman that whose neck he bit. And so it's and I think he likes her because she's a different kind of woman, a new kind of woman, right? She's strong and she is smart, and so he sees in her something that I don't think he's ever seen in any other woman.
Yeah, so if you go back to the Lugosi movie, to use a common phrase, he's on automatic pilot. I mean, he's going to bite your neck.
Yes.
He's on automatic pilot. But in the Langella movie, he's not on automatic pilot. He can choose, this one I'll bite their neck and that one I won't.
Well, right. I mean, he does. He bites them both, but he feels differently about, it's not there. She's not just another source of blood. I guess that would be the way to say it.
Yeah. Well, just refresh my memory. What about death? Who died in the original one?
In the original one,
does she die or?
Lucy dies
Lucy dies.
first, and
Okay.
then Mina is under his thrall until until Van Helsing drives a stake
Right.
through his heart.
And then what happens to her?
She is then freed,
She's
Yeah,
liberated.
right? Because she's liberated.
So what
which
about
is
the
in,
second?
okay.
What about the Langella movie?
All right. In the Langella movie, who wants to say what happens in the Langella movie?
You know what I was thought was a bit humorous in the Langella movie is after who is the one Lucy after Lucy gets bitten, her clothes start looking like his cape. It had
Oh.
her clothes start looking like vampire clothes.
Yeah,
And I'm like, you had this in your closet?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's it's a movie. Come on. She starts dressing more vampire-ish.
Yeah, and she does become a vampire, but then she is set free, right, when he dies.
Well, okay, but that's the question. What happens at the end, right? So, Dracula is escaping. Dracula is escaping on a ship, and Van Helsing and Harkin are chasing him. And they're in a little boat, and they catch up to the big boat, and they get the boat, and then they get him out. They open up the coffin, and he's fighting with him. And of course, it's dark in the bowels of the ship, and so they're fighting. And of course, real quickly, Laurence Olivier is Van Helsing, and Donald Pleasance is Seward. Yeah, I mean it's a really strong cast in my opinion. But anyway, so they're fighting, and it's 2 against 1. But Dracula is even though it's during the day, it's still dark, and he's in the ship, and so he's much stronger than Harkin and Van Helsing, who's an old man, but he ends up being jammed in the back with a hook, and Harker then pulls up the rope, and he gets dragged out up the mast, and as he's spinning around at the top of the mast, he gets older and older and older, and we think, okay, he's dead. But at the very end, we see his black cape flying away or being blown away. And we don't see him. We don't see a body. We don't see a bat. All we see is the cloak flying away. And so, and then we cut down to Lucy, who's on the boat as well. We cut down to her face, and she's lying on her back, and we cut down to her face, and she's there, and she cracks a little smile.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And so, Joe, Janine, Jeanette, what do you think? How did you read that smile, and how did you read the cloak flying away?
Yeah, I thought that he was alive, but maybe she's too much trouble and he'll sleep for another 100 years and find.
You know what? By the time it got to that part, I didn't know if he was alive or he wasn't alive, but I didn't care. I just didn't get into it. I didn't care. And to be honest with you, I don't remember the smile.
Oh, okay.
It was very subtle.
Yeah, but we focus, but we're looking at her face for a while though. And so there's questions about, does it mean that he's alive and she knows it? It's been suggested that maybe she's carrying his baby, but you don't get the sense. There's definitely not this. He's dead and she's now free. She's now back to normal the way it is in the 1931 film. right? So it's not a clean cut, you know, a clean break. Okay, he's gone, everybody's safe, everybody's back to normal. Which I think is interesting. Now, Badham did get sort of, you know, criticized because it's like, oh, well, you were just going for a sequel. He said, I was never interested in a sequel, right? He said, I never wanted to make a second Dracula movie. So, but I do think, he said, I do like having the audience think about, you know, I want them to do some work. I want them to think about after the movie. Well, what does that mean? Or is he still alive? Is he dead? Right? Certainly. And Langella didn't want to be seen decaying. Right? He said, I fought against that. Partially because I didn't want to do it, but secondly, I didn't want to see him decay. I didn't want to see him lose his looks. He didn't mind him dying or whatever happens, but he didn't, because every time he turns, you see his face getting more and more worn away. So, but I would have to say, given Joe's review, Badham, it didn't work for some in the audience. So, but there you go.
So it's I don't want to be rude. It's 5 minutes to 8, and at 8 o'clock I turn into a pumpkin because I've got something else to do, and I didn't want to just get up and leave at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
So, you know, in the last 5 minutes, I would like to say that I've enjoyed this, and I hope we can do more of these.
Yeah, me
not
too.
only enjoyed it, but I learned from it and I benefited from it, and I hope.
Yeah, it almost gave me an idea, and I don't know if you guys think it would be worth it, because we talked about James Bond movies. What if we picked one from each different actor that played James Bond?
Yeah.
About that.
Yeah, we could do that. Sure.
I don't know if you think that's a good idea. And I just had one final question. Has anyone watched any other Dracula movies that have been out?
I saw, I'm trying to think of which one did I see? It was.
Well, I did see the Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, where Bela Lugosi was Dracula in that movie again.
Yeah.
And has he made any other Dracula movies, Bela Lugosi, that, you know?
I don't think so. Or I shouldn't say that. That may be the case. I think I might have. I think I saw Van Helsing. You know,
Yeah,
that
I
one.
saw that too.
But I think that was probably the only one.
Did you see Interview with a Vampire? It wasn't Dracula character, but it was, you know, the vampire.
No, I didn't. But I did see The Hunger with Catherine Deneuve and David Bowie. That was in the early 80s, and you know, so that was a vampire movie, but not Dracula. But real quickly, Donald Pleasance, who plays Seward. I was watching this thing, and they were saying that because Donald Pleasance is eating throughout the movie. He's always kind of says his line, and then he eats something, and somebody had warned Langella, make sure you're not in any two shot. You know, you don't want to be on any two shots with Donald Pleasance because he's always going to steal the scene from you. And what Pleasance would do is I guess he does this in lots of films, but he finds some business to do so that right after his line, he does whatever, like, so he'll throw a piece of candy in his mouth, which makes it impossible for the editors to cut the scene before he does it, you know, so it makes it, you know, so it's like you're going to get this whole thing from Donald Pleasance whether you want it or not. So it's just like that's acting right there. That's film acting. So I'm not going to let you cut me before I'm done with what I'm doing after I say this line. But anyway, so I just had to throw that in because that's just too good. But
well, I have to say I've enjoyed this very much, and I feel like I need to give the Langella movie one more shot and come into it with a different mindset.
Okay. You still, and real quickly, I'm returning this tomorrow. So you can get it from Lucy Robbins Welles Library.
Can get both of them. We just got the old one. We didn't have a copy of the old one either, so we just.
Okay, and real quickly, the old one is, does that have both? Does that have the Philip Glass score on it? Because they re-released it. The original one has some music, but doesn't have an entire score.
Oh,
And then there's one that has a new Philip Glass score, which I haven't
it does
heard.
say it. Yeah, actually, I bought this one from Amazon myself because I had points, so I got both movies for $7. But
Nice.
so Philip Glass score, it says right
Yeah,
on.
so I think it has both versions. You can watch it without the score and with the score, and even without
And
the
there's
score,
a
I like it
Spanish
without the score.
version on it
So,
too.
yeah, so
It's
yeah,
in Spanish.
yeah, but it's a different cast. It's not Bela Lugosi.
Oh, really?
Same year, but different cast because it's from Spain. But anyway, but like I said, I picked both of these, as it were, and I like the Bela Lugosi film more than the Langella 2. But you still, why not watch it, right? Anyway.